I looked at doing business doctors 2.5 years ago, paid my deposit and everything, and I then got another job in corporate life, and I had this weekend of, do I go down business doctors route or do I go back to corporate life? And head won, and I went back to corporate life, and it was a disaster in terms of my head was in the space of wanting to work on my own, but I got lured back into corporate life because of the money and lots of promises. So that didn't work out after about a year, so I then went back to see Rod and Matt, and fortunately the territory that I wanted was still available. I mean, I personally did lots of research. I didn't just look at business doctors. I looked at, about 10 different sorts of franchisees. Eventually sort of thought, well, actually, I really ought to look at doing something I feel I'm reasonably sort of qualified to do, which is run businesses. I guess part of today is about your own due diligence. It is about asking lots of questions. Fundamentally, what are you getting for your money? Do speak to existing franchisees. I know Rod and Matt will give you every single one of those names for you to phone up and talk to, and you will get different experiences. Some people get the business off the ground very quickly, other people it takes a little while to do it. For me, what was particularly important was the culture of the organisation. How collaborative was it? I wanted to work by myself, but not on my own. And then there's a book called Street Smart Franchising, which I bought, and it's a great book, and it's written from the franchisee's perspective. I absolutely believe I probably could have gone in a darkened room for 6 months and created my own version of business doctors. I've got an MBA and I've got lots of business experience, so why was I paying over all this money to business doctors? You build up a lot of credibility simply by being able to demonstrate that you've been there and done it and lost money, made money, and that builds quite a degree of affinity. And for me, what was really important was the confidence of the franchise itself and the other franchisees saying, Andy, if you keep doing what you're doing, it will come right. So lots of people to talk to, very collaborative in its nature, which is one of the reasons why I joined anyway. Matt, Rod, Paul, other senior franchisees coming to support you, be it an exhibition or a workshop or a seminar. I don't think it's for the faint-hearted, because I used to sign off £1 million cheques in corporate life. I ran a business that employed 1,000 people, and here I am in June worrying about whether I spend £100 on an advert, or do I join the BNI network, which is £600. So all of a sudden, your decisions in the context of corporate life are very small, but for you personally in your business are quite big decisions. What you're doing in those first few months is building two things: the business doctor's brand and your own personal brand. And then in terms of the future, hopefully where you get to is where there's an interdependence between you and the franchise. And I think we all feel like we can contribute to the way the franchise develops over time. Your natural tendency is to think about doing things slightly differently, or actually you don't need to follow the franchise model anyway, I'll just do my own thing. And all I can say there is, why have you bought a franchise if you're not going to follow the model? Because you might as well just set up on your own anyway. But I like to think of it as a sort of freedom within a framework. You have a framework of tools and products and services and a way of doing things, but I have complete freedom as to how I apply that in my territory, who I work with, when I work with them, and whether I want to do a piece of work or not. If I don't, ideally I might have an associate I can put in there and earn a bit while they're working, or I might even, I've got one client who wanted to do some work and I didn't really want to work with them, so if I found a polite way of saying thank you, but I don't really want to work with you anymore. You then get to the growing confidence stage, so they call it the me stage. You really start to understand the franchise model, how to apply it. You run your first seminars, workshops. All of a sudden, a couple of clients are falling out of the back of that, and you think, Christ, I can really see how this works now. And the virtuous circle to a degree, because once you start to build a reputation, then it does feed off each other. I ran my first seminar towards the end of September. I ran 2 in October. Matt came and supported me, and 25 people I think came to my first one, in a room, and gradually they start to understand what we're about and how we can help them. I got my first client in October. I've got 27 now. I've got one client who says, I worry about you coming because as I know you'll hold me accountable for what I haven't done. Kevin talks about a bad smell. He goes, I tell my clients I'm like a bad smell. I'll hang around until X, Y gets done. And so, we're the boss that they don't have. You do get into those personal personal relationships. But actually, the guy this morning said, you know, the greatest thing is I've got somebody like you who's almost as enthusiastic about my business as I am. Because you do get, you know, you do build up some affinity with their business and the challenges they're facing. I finished the training at the end of May last year, and so in June I went to every single networking event that was possible to go to in Milton Keynes and some in Oxford as well. And you know, by the end of June I thought, well, why has nobody bought from me? Don't they know who I am? Don't they know what I've done and, you know, how much I can? Well, they don't really give a monkey's what you've done in the past. There's a phrase in networking called know, like, trust. So, you know, people know you, then like you, then trust you. And you have to go through that sort of know, like, trust for people to want to really buy with you. I started at the beginning of June. At the end of March, because my financial year was the end of March, I'd billed 30 grand. In my second year, so that was June to May, I had a budget of 80 grand, so a revenue of 80 grand. I've already won 80 grand's worth of business in the first 3 months, so I will probably do 120, 130 in my second year. So depending upon what products you're selling, they may or may not have a gross margin. So if it's my time, it's 100% gross margin. If I'm buying the 360 or personality questionnaires, then it's probably a 66, 60. So my average gross margin is probably about 90%.